All right. Hey everyone, I'm a final year medical student at UCL, and I'm the Medmentor Clinic Live lead. Today we'll be talking about interview questions, how to prepare for interviews, key techniques and tips. And along those lines, if you guys have any questions on that, please do ask them, because that is a Q&A session. So hopefully I can give you guys some insight. So from my side, I've interviewed at UCL for medical school. So I've been a UCL medical school interviewer for the last 2 to 3 years. So being on the admissions on the interview panel, you realize what you're looking for in a candidate, especially after doing quite a few in any given year. And so hopefully I can pass on the expertise, because obviously UCL look for things, but the things that UCL look for are very similar to all the other medical schools across the country, because they're all medical students are taken on along the same like characteristics and basis. So that's what that's a little bit about me and my expertise in the interview field. So if you guys have any questions about interviews in specific, or just any questions about medicine, medical applications in general, please do drop a question down, whether that's in the comments or the cue cards that come up. So Medmentor, we have a huge website with loads of things going on, from blog posts to lives like this, to then our monthly newsletter, and obviously all the social media work that we do as well. I think currently, I think Faye, who is a YouTuber, I think she has 20,000 to like 30,000 subscribers right now. She's a cool medical student at university, and on her YouTube channel, she is doing a free giveaway. If you follow Medmentor and things like that, look on her channel to then come across the free giveaway. I think it's like £20 Nando's card, or a free 1 hour session with Medmentor on it, or like personal statement help for free as well, which is like the prize draw. So yeah, do have a look at that. So guys, if you want to drop your questions below, please do. We are running this Medmentor clinic every week on a Saturday at 6 to 7 p.m. And we run that normally throughout the year. I think next week we will be off because it's Boxing Day. But apart from that, we're always around. So if you this week, please do bring it forward to the following week. Hey, so Asul GC. So I recognize you from previous weekend's Medmentor weekly clinics. Thank you for joining us again. It's nice to have a friendly face / title. So can you tell us abnormal or unexpected questions we might get, one you've got in your interview or through you being a panel member? So yes, there are some. Okay, so I think, disclaimer before I start any of this, ASC medical book on buy that from Amazon, costs £20 to £25, and it is and it's definitely worthwhile getting, because that has a lot of common interview questions that end up being common for you rather than obscure for yourself. And the reason why I say that is, for example, in my Cardiff medical school interview 6 years ago now, I remember they asked me a question about like, if you were the secretary and you had £1 million or £10 million, where would you put that money to? And because I hadn't read that book before, that was an obscure or very abnormal question for me. So yeah, abnormal can be different, you think, but there are a few curveball questions that people do get asked. So one that I got asked at UCL when I applied was about the way I study, which seems very, I know it's me and they're getting to know me, but I didn't know what their mark scheme would be for or like what marks I'd get for me telling them how I study. So I literally told them I have 3 Uniball micro pens that I use to write my handwritten notes, and I have like revision textbooks, I have revision book, I have like 3-4 different pieces of like data or like sources, and then I compile my notes based on those. Back then, 6 years ago, I had no idea what active recall was, so I couldn't give them a better answer than that. And then they pushed me with like, so what about like electronically? Do you use your laptop for stuff and things? And I think they're starting to allude to the fact that everything at university is online. So like, so they'd be open to learning through online systems, not just like myself, like revising with books and stuff. So, and all universities are the same. All our work is online. Even our lectures are, especially during the pandemic period. So I guess that's what they were looking at, and I was like, yeah, happy to have a look. So in terms of, can you tell us about another abnormal question? So I think MMIs really have tricky questions. I haven't been involved in any MMIs before, but it's the classic role play scenarios do put people off. There's like data scenarios as well. It's a bit tricky. Comes to any other abnormal questions, like Oxford and Cambridge are the ones that they ask, like, oh, like if they're, and these are types of questions I think that do push boundaries, and more med schools will start to adopt like things that are like vague questions. So for example, I know a friend of mine who got into medicine at Cambridge, and their question was, how many toothbrushes do you think there are in the city of London? And that seemed like a crazy question. But then it's like, and the reason why I mentioned this question is because actually it's a very unexpected question. But if you break it down logically and critically think, which I try and reinforce to you guys, as you'll know as well, if you critically think about it, my friend started answering it like, okay, so I know there's, let's say, X million people in London. I think maybe like, I don't know how many there are anymore, but like, let's say they said, I'll assume there's 15 million people. Of those 15 includes kids and babies and like elderly, all of that. So then each one of them would have a toothbrush of sort, give or take maybe a certain percentage, and therefore there'd be this many toothbrushes in London, like stuff like that. Some people might have two, some people might have three. Like it's like, yeah, it's a bit weird. On average, okay, so you've got another question. Thank you for that. And I can see. So guys, we're also live on our YouTube channel, we're live on our Twitter page, and we're also live on Medmentor on our website. So if you have any access to those, please feel free to ask questions through that. So I'm gonna ask. I've got a question asked on YouTube from Kichuri. That's a Kichuri. Yeah, Kichuri. Can you help me to answer this, please? Describe an interesting medical development in recent times. Okay, so the question was, can you help me to answer this question? Please describe a recent interesting medical development. Okay, recent one. So I think this is where, I mean, right now, what I'd say would be the COVID vaccine, wouldn't it? Like that's what I'd be reading up on right now, finding out how they got around to finding out about the virus from genetically sequencing them in, let's say, I think a couple of weeks to months, when let's say 15, 20 years ago, it would take us maybe 2-3 years to genetically sequence the entire genome of the virus maybe. And then from that, they were able to identify the issue. So then you can see here, like I'm trying to explain and talk through this discovery and like how it's been found maybe, and what it's been implemented to be used for. And then I'd like get down to like, oh, the advantages and disadvantages of having a vaccine like this, maybe potential side effects I'd look into. So I definitely talk about the COVID vaccine as a new medical discovery. When it comes to technology, I think AI systems are very interesting. I think there was a company called Babylon Health. When I was in about third year of medical school, they became really, really big because they were the first ever tech like AI company to gain access to NHS patients and NHS funds directly. And so that was a really interesting innovation that I will talk about, because it was like, instead of me going to a GP straight away, what I do is I basically chat box with a AI system, telling them my symptoms after they ask me specific questions to break down the symptoms and to predict a diagnosis and then future investigations needed. So yeah, Bab Healthcare, I definitely look into it. So with these type of questions, Kichuri, what I'd say is to definitely do what I'd say is definitely go on and check every couple of days, just like BBC Health News and stuff, or every day if you're close to the interview. And what before that as well is just kind of read up on these discoveries that you'd want to maybe talk about, and make sure you research them well so you can elaborate on them. Maybe have one or two in the back of your mind that you're quite interested in. I think this type of question is also a bit sneaky because sometimes it says recent times, sometimes it says 50 years, sometimes it says 100 years. And obviously there's a big difference now. So when I was applying in 2014, obviously the last 50 years included like 1960s or 70s. Right now it goes all the way up to like end of 1970s to 80s. So you got to have a better frame of mind as well. Yeah, genetic sequencing and like linking things to that, there's a lot around that. So what I talk about there for describing an interesting medical development, I talk something about that, or AI systems or medical technology is going on right now. But I'd encourage you to research it if that's all right. Kichuri, I hope I've been able to answer your question there to an extent. Drop a comment below if I have or haven't, if you have any follow-up ones as well. All right, cool, guys. If you guys have questions, please do drop them on the chat and question cards. So thank you for being involved. Appreciate your questions. Gonna have a look at your next one. So on average, how many questions would we get that are considered ethical questions? Okay. From what I know, ethical questions are very obviously niche questions, number one. And what I'd say, maybe one big ethical question might be asked. So like Imperial interviews normally ask them. UCL interviews didn't used to, because they used to have the actual writing, BMAT writing piece, which was basically an ethical question. But so yeah, one main ethical question, and then they might ask you, you're going to have to do for and against, and they might have follow-up questions with that. When it comes to MMI stations, the MMI stations don't normally repeat themselves. So definitely look at whichever you're applying to. So you have they said anything about what type of stations come up, and if there's one or two of them maybe. But I wouldn't expect too many, and don't be too worried about it. As long as you break, really scared about ethical questions when I was med school, mainly because like 1 month before my first interview did I finally find out what the 4 principles of medical ethics were. So that was really, really, really late on. Like everyone I knew had already known about it. I was like, okay. No one had mentioned it, but it was like basic stuff. But yeah, as long as you're answering the question based on autonomy, maleficence, non-maleficence, beneficence, I think. Benevolence, I don't know, beneficence? I don't know what I'm saying. And can you guys, all right, you know what? And justice, so there's 4 of them. I just did my SJT, I should definitely know this. Guys, drop below the 4 principles of medical ethics that you know about. Please drop them below in the comments. What are they? And as long as you're following the structure of the medical ethics like principles, and you're talking for and against for each one, or like 1 or 2 specific ones that apply to it, you can really ace ethical dilemmas without knowing too much about things. Also, if you're ever worried, please do ask them questions. Hey, another aspiring medic, it's good to have you on. And so you let me know, are you applying to medical school in the next year, or like which are you in, like year 12, year 13, or are you waiting an interview? Just gauge where you're at with that. So also let me know if I've answered your questions to a good amount. If you have any others, drop me a message down here. Another aspiring medic, thank you very much. Autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. Yeah, I got it. I think I don't know. I should definitely know it. I'm in my final year of med school. I definitely know it. Don't worry about it. Thank you for that, though, aspiring medic. So if you guys have questions, drop them below. Okay, so as I'm waiting for your questions to come in, what I'll do is maybe talk to you guys about a question that everyone asks me about every time, and it's like, and the question was, hey, okay, so, oh, good. You're waiting for an interview. That sounds good. Thanks, Barry Benny. I appreciate the support. And so good luck with it all. Hopefully you're getting one very soon. And so yeah, drop your questions that you have. So a question that normally people ask me about is, how do you answer why medicine? Now, that's a very interesting question. And I like to have, so it's very personal to each person, is what I'd say, first of all. Like, you need to have a real reason to why you want to do medicine. And I'd encourage you to like really deeply reflect on that, because that reason of why medicine will probably get you through the next 5 to 6 years of medical school as well, give or take a few added things. So my reason for why medicine was, and it was multifaceted. All right. So first of all, for me, it really was because I wanted to help make a difference or have an impact in people's lives. And that is what it still comes down to every single day when I have to do clinics and stuff, and I'm training to do med school, get through med school and do my exams, is to like learn this so that if someone is in pain or suffering or needs help, medical help, like I can do my utmost to resolve what they have wrong with them, basically. So it's that one-to-one personal connection. And the reason why I want that is because I'm someone who really enjoys like talking to people, interacting, using the communication skills, and I'm like a people person. And I found that out using my work experiences that I did. But more than anything else, from my GP work experience that I did all the way back in year 10 summer, I realized there in that moment that what the GP practitioner was doing in terms of building rapport with a patient, that's what I wanted to have in my day job, like every single day, knowing about people, their worries, their family stuff, their what's going on in their lives, and how I can help them. I'm a bit of a chit chat. I want to also help do something with my life and also do something to help them. So it comes down to that at the core for me. And that's something that has taken me a long time to articulate or even think through. And it probably wasn't that good when I was applying for med school, because only with experience do you realize more and more why you're doing it. But the other two or three facets are that actually I'm someone who really likes a range of subjects. So I'm someone who really likes humanities, although I do like the sciences when it's applied in this sense in medicine. So I was never like a nerd when it came to biology and chemistry. Like I was thankfully good at it to an extent, but I never enjoyed it as much as some of the humanities I did. And so what I realized is actually medicine is as a subject, as a topic, and as a career, it requires skills from a whole facet of different subjects. So from psychology to biology, chemistry, to knowing good English skills, to write letters, to writing patient notes, to knowing about the history of medicine, to knowing about the economics behind NHS policies, to knowing about politics, because that's what we need to get involved with as doctors, to knowing about sociology and communication skills and about people's lives in that way, talking to medicine. So like it's very multifaceted. I think it encapsulates a whole array of different subjects. And that's what I really, really loved about it, because I didn't want to just do something purely like economics, like where it's just purely maths based, when actually my math skills will be used when I do dosage calculations in medicine, for example. So like for me, I didn't want to just go down one. I'm very much a generalist, and I still am. And so I recognize that medicine needs that in a degree, definitely, and then maybe in the future as well. And hence why I want to be a GP. So that's what I realized from that. So it was multifaceted in that way. It's because of what I actually wanted to learn and the impact I wanted to make in people's lives. But realizing that now from a micro level as well as a macro level, where you can do something like global health or public health and make a difference to a whole array of people's lives as well through policy. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. I hope you have you enjoyed that. What do you guys think about my answer to why medicine? Do you think there's any way I can improve that? Anything else that you guys think? So, like, what about you guys? If you guys have like real reasons why you want to do medicine, do you want to drop them below, or any questions following up from that? I think a lot of the times people ask me, I have something quite personal to me. So, for example, a friend or family might have been ill, and you might have been in hospital and seen doctors. And if that's the real reason why you wanted to do medicine, and that caused the spark, definitely mention that. But the one thing is, don't just focus on that one thing, because that's just one point in time. You need to show a little bit more. So you need to show about like that you're curious about the subject and the topic. You want to show that you've done work experience to show some of the things that you're talking about. Just like the GP work experience that I did. So just don't go on one thing only. Cool. Hope you guys have enjoyed that answer. All right, guys, if you have questions, drop them below. We're doing a Q&A on medical applications in general, but quite specifically at the moment on interviews. So if you have any questions about like a medical interview stuff or applications, drop them below. I have interviewed on the UCL Medical School panel before. So yeah, I've got a little bit of experience on that. Okay, so I've got a question on Facebook. Yeah, I forgot that we were doing lives on Facebook. So Hilary Bilal, thank you very much for your question. How can I respond to the question? Some trusts are refusing to perform some elective operations on obese patients. Why do you think that is? It's right. Okay, so we've got an ethical question here. The question is, some trusts are refusing to perform some elective operations on obese patients. Why do you think that is, and do you think it's right? Okay, so this is a very interesting question. Now let's look at it from my point of view. I'm going to start off with as a medical student. So maybe you've had experience or you've read up on bariatric surgery. So from my experiences and reading up on it is that to do elective operations on obese patients, okay. So it's not for bariatric surgery per se. It's just because someone's BMI is quite high. Okay, so in this current climate, a risk factor to having quite bad COVID symptoms and prognosis is actually having a high BMI and being obese, as well as other other factors on top. So what that means is that any elective procedure that you do in a hospital, you're obviously at a little bit higher risk being in a hospital than any house. So that in itself, being obese already is a risk factor. So therefore, that is something that people were thinking about. So when it comes to this specific question, some elective operations on some Titanisa, I'm going to answer your question in just a bit, okay? I do have some stuff on Cardiff. So to perform some elective operations on obese patients, why do you think that is? So some hospital staffs trusts will be refusing to perform some elective operations on obese patients. Okay, so they clearly must have a reason for doing so. So that's what, first of all, you're going to try and list about the structure on how you're going to approach this question then, yep? Okay, so number one, do you think it's right? You don't need to say yes or no straight away. You just start with yes or no, and then you break it down, okay? And then you come to a conclusion in the end saying that it's only your opinion. So do you to refuse performing some okay, so guys, how would you guys also answer this? How some trusts are refusing to perform some elective operations on obese patients. Why do you think that is, and do you think it's right? So another reason why I think that this is the case is because people who have elective operations and are obese, they have a higher chance of getting post-op complications, which obviously is a problem for the actual patient themselves. So it's always a risk-benefit analysis when it comes to deciding any operation. But obviously, if an operation is worthwhile, the benefits are outweighing the risk, you should go ahead with it, in my opinion. And that is how it should work. So that's what we're talking about there. So that comes down to the pillar of, I think, non-maleficence, do no harm. And then when it comes to actually maleficence, obese patients also need operations, and it's not right to just say outright have a blanket ban on anyone above a certain BMI, because also at the same time, if you critically think about it, BMI is not the most perfect measure to decide on if a patient is obese or not, because some people have different body fat ratios. BMI is different based on ethnicity. So Black Afro-Caribbean people and those on Asian minorities aren't as suited to the BMI scales that we use right now for Western populations. People have higher body muscle that can contribute to it. So some people might be unfairly categorized as overweight through the BMI system if not thought about properly, and then that would be unfair on them as well, because it's not accurate in identifying those people. Why do you and then in other reasons why it might be a good thing, bad thing is obviously you're almost, it feels like you might be discriminating if you've got someone above a certain BMI, although for medical reasons you have a justification for it. And so therefore that could potentially put some legal problems on the horizon as well. Cool. Hilary, I hope I've been able to help answer the question to an extent with a few insights that I have. What do you think the answer to that question that you just posted is? Any other ideas that you're thinking about, and any follow-up questions? So guys, the question was, some hospital trusts are refusing to perform some elective operations on obese patients. Why do you think that is, and do you think it is right? That's a very tricky and interesting question. As you could tell, I've been stuttering with my words, so was not expecting to get basically an interview done on myself today as well, but it sounds like it is. Guys, any other questions you guys have about or like interview questions and stuff like that, please do drop them below. Tanisa, thank you very much for your comment. We are trying to be as helpful as we can on Medmentor and making this a free platform for everyone to enjoy. So please do join us every Saturday, and do keep the questions coming in. So Tanya, you have a question that you've sent to us. Any advice specific to Cardiff and most common mistakes you've seen in? Okay, so first of all, let's address any advice specific to Cardiff. So I myself had a Cardiff Medical School interview 6 years ago, back when it was a panel interview, and I thought I did pretty okay. It was very, very early on in November, and I was not prepared enough, I realized. But when I walked in, I had a lot of questions asked. I think there was like 25 questions in 20 minutes, which was crazy. But since then, they've become MMI, and they have also still been as tricky to get into, because obviously it's a very good medical school and they really do ask questions. So my brother actually had an interview at Cardiff 2 years ago, or the year before, and he said that the MMI was pretty okay. They had some common questions that came up and some role play scenarios. So what I'd say is to read the ISC medical text book if you haven't already, and go through their common questions. And they didn't have too many things that swerved him per se, but that's not to say they don't have anything there. Obviously, all interviews these days, so this is something in general for everyone to know, all medical school interviews, I'm presuming in the UK, are going to be online via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or however. So all the med school interviews this year are going to be very different, especially when it comes to MMI to previous years. So whilst in MMI stations before, you had loads of role play activity, like loads of body language cues and stuff like that, obviously you don't have the same here. However, some med schools might differ it a little bit, might change it up a little bit, and some and might give you extra help. So a friend of mine had an interview at Anglia Ruskin recently, and they actually had an interview seminar for people who had interviews scheduled from them, where they would tell them about what to expect from an online medical school interview, because they didn't want them to be lost and just not knowing what was going on. And one of the main things that a few of the things that they mentioned included the fact that they gave the topics of what the MMI interview stations were going to include. I know not Bristol, Sheffield University used to do that previous years as well. So definitely have a look online and see if they do give you those topic lists, so that you can have a look at and prepare for. And so for Cardiff, make sure you look on the website to see if there's any seminars, or if you know anyone in LD in previous years that have had interviews, please do ask them. If you don't know anyone specifically, do maybe give us a message on Medmentor. We can't promise to help you with like the interview stuff in terms of like seeing people in years above, but obviously we'll see what we can do to help, or just come along here. So if Tanisa, if you don't know anyone in Cardiff in years above, I can definitely ask my brother who had the interview, and get him to give some advice on the interview itself. So drop us a message next week as well. So most common mistakes that I've seen in interviews. Could you give us common difficult based questions and answers, please? Hey, okay, cool. Hey, Pohe, that's a really good question. I'm gonna go through that in just a second. So I'm gonna answer Tanisha's question. It goes, most common mistakes you've seen in interview. Hold on 1 second. So I've got two cameras going on because we've got Insta Live and we've got the other lives as well. So most common mistakes you've seen interviews. Okay, some mistakes I've seen in interviews are or like the biggest mistakes, I think. And the reason why people get rejected is because the interview panelists feel like they're being arrogant. That's one. So there's a very fine line between confidence and humility, and then arrogance. So you got to try and balance that out. Another way that people have been rejected is because they've memorized answers. So I definitely encourage you to research and basically revise and prepare really, really, really well for your interview, as if it's an exam, because it really is. It's just a verbal exam. But I not recommend you memorize for what your answers. Maybe you memorize the points that you could maybe bring, and don't memorize it, is what I'd say, because those that memorized medical school interview questions, we as interviewers can really easily tell what happened there, and like we don't like it, and you get rejected outright as soon as memorizing it. And one way you can find out you're memorizing, ask you answer, and sometimes like fast, blah blah blah, and like it might sound a bit robotic. Maybe the benefit of the doubt. The way we realize you've actually memorized is we then give you follow-up questions, and people really crumble like that. Question completely start confused. So yeah, that's that. The other thing that I'd say common mistakes is, I think one mistake is people who do not have enough confidence in themselves, and that is a lot of us medical students, that's applicants like myself. I'm from a widening participation background, and I don't know any medics in my family, so I didn't know what was needed to get into med school. I thought you had to be like a super genius, or like had to be amazing, and you have to be pretty good, but you don't have to be the best. And what I realized at the end of the application window is that I was good enough to get into medical school. It's just I didn't know it, and I did get in, and thankfully I did so. But like it was too late. By the time I got in, I realized only then that I loved the place. When really and truly, if you're thinking about medical school, especially like if you're applying as well, that you should have confidence in yourself to get in, because you're applying. You've done so much. You've had masses of experience. You've got exams to do. Like you're doing it, and you're dedicating yourself to medicine and to get in right now. When it comes to getting an interview, that means this medical school wants you. Okay, you never ever be nervous. Okay, I'm saying that, but everyone's nervous for an interview. But a medical school interview, if you of those, it wants you at their medical school and just wants to see like how good you are for you to then get in, right? It's like a screening process. You've done so much academically, they know you're clever enough for it. Now they want to find out if you're the type of person that will work in their medical school to become their type of doctor. That's the frame of mind that you need to have. You need to have a positive frame of mind, not to go like, oh my God, I got an interview, and think negatively about it, where it's like, I'm going to get so many things wrong. It's difficult. It's going to be really, I'm going to get myself into this medical. They want you, so invite you to spend 20 minutes to half an hour with their doctors and post-medical students who are interviewing you and taking their time out to try and get you into medical school. So they want you there. So have that confidence. When I have this interview, I can't wait to tell people why I should be at their medical school, and this is my chance to basically shine there. That is how I would say you need to approach every medical school or any interview you have ever, and that's the right frame of mind. And the reason why I say that it works, because a lot of my mentees felt like they were overwhelmed by getting an interview, but when they changed that mindset, there was a noticeable change in their content came to mock interviews as well. And for myself, before my Cardiff interview, I was quite scared and nervous, and rightly so. But then I had my UCL interview about 3-4 months later, and it was like, I got rejected from Cardiff. This is probably to get into medical school. I'm going to show these guys at UCL, like, they need to take me because I'm amazing, and I'm going to smash it, and I'm going to get this interview done. And alhamdulillah, I did well to do it, but it's a lot about mindset there. So hopefully I've been able to alleviate some fears, instill some confidence in you guys, because you guys are going to be amazing. And hopefully, Tanisa, I've been able to answer your question to an extent. Have I been able to do so? So I'm just double checking the live studio. And you're very welcome. Hilar was able to answer your question to a good extent. All right, cool. You're very welcome, Tanisa. If you have other questions, please do drop them below as well. Okay, so now I'm looking at Insta Live right now, and I see there's some questions coming in. If you guys have any other questions, drop them on the quest. Motivational talks with Tafsir. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? It's another sparring medic. Thank you very much for that. But yeah, have that in your back of your head. By the way, I have to do this motivational talk myself like every couple of days, even as a medical student, because it's bare tough. So like, yeah, I'm used to do these things for myself, let alone for other people. Okay, so Pohe, coming to your question, common or difficult value-based questions and answers, please. Okay, Pohe, if you could clarify what you mean by value-based questions, just because that's the first time I've heard of that term, and then I can maybe talk about that. Value-based do you mean that ethically or your personal values, ethical values? If so, I don't really know. As I said, I would recommend just using the ISC medical textbook for questions and common medical school questions, because that's. Thank you, so appreciate that. Hey, Maisha, welcome to the Insta Live. We've had you on here in previous weekends. Hello, Amna. Hope you guys are doing all right. How's everyone doing? I hear that. So I'm living in London, in Southeast London, not in Southeast London, Southeast England, and so we're going into Tier 4, which is basically another lockdown. Got announced an hour ago, so that was interesting. How is everyone else feeling about lockdown / med school interviews and what's going on? How's everyone's lives going on? Drop me other questions. You know what? It's interesting. I think a lot of I'm not sure either. Any would be great. Oh, Pohe, okay, bless you. Let me try and answer your question. So could you give us some common or difficult value-based questions, please? Okay, so one of the common questions are like, what have you read recently in the news, in a medical or in the news, and elaborate on that. And that's basically an opportunity for you to shine, read around topics in the Guardian and then make sure in BBC Health News, and then make sure you know 1 or 2 articles that you can elaborate on, do a for and against argument, have your own conclusion, have different insights. It's a very easy question if you get that, and if you prepare for it very well. So I definitely prepare for something like that. I'd say other types of questions. Obviously, most medical school interview questions now are medical school interviews are MMI. So when it comes to that, they have very different type of common questions. They have loads more role play. They have loads more critical thinking. They're very, very tricky, and you don't really have common stuff going on there anymore. They kind of add a spin to it. I can't think of anything like off the top of my head when it comes to like common interview questions. Otherwise, like, why would you want to come to this university? Those are common. The other stuff are like let's say, I don't know, like what in medical school, what in medicine interests you the most, or like questions that I've mentioned already before, like tell me about a book that you've read before, what do you do in your free time, what do you do to de-stress, your extracurricular activities, things like that are very interesting, because obviously you get to know more about people from that. In other questions, yeah, I mean, like, obviously questions depend on all type of medical schools. Okay, so NHS values, that's interesting. I think it's the NHS value-based recruitment. So okay, I think in the last 5 to 7 years, there's become much more of a like a focus on NHS values, core values, especially since the 5 year plan came out on the NHS like a couple of years ago. So during my time, I didn't actually have any NHS core value questions. I don't actually know what you mean by NHS values. So what do you guys think are NHS core values? Do you mind commenting below? Even if you Google search it, what do you think are NHS core values? I think obviously the main value of the NHS is that it's free at the point of use. It doesn't discriminate against anyone, whatever race, sexuality, orientation, anything. It doesn't like if you've got money or don't. I think that's what NHS core value is as an organization. When it comes to other things, maybe are we looking at ethical principles, autonomy? But like again, those are like very common questions that come up. But yeah, drop any NHS values that you guys think that we can address, apart from the one or two that I mentioned there. NHS values. So like I remember in the BMAT essay, that is a very interesting question. Like we should, okay, do you agree with this statement? We should not treat people who have injuries from extreme or so I don't know, snowboarding or like caballing or like crazy BMXing. Basically, the question was that if someone is self-inflicting the injury, carrying out high-risk activities, we as NHS should not pay for the damages caused by that because it's at their own risk, and they as a population group are at more increased risk of like having to be operated on by doing that, for example. And that was a very interesting question. I really liked answering that BMAT essay question, and that's something that could easily be asked. And then you can talk about the principles of like medical ethics and apply and answer it through that. My whole point was that if you start doing that, it means that the NHS core value of free at the point of use is disregarded. Then it opens the door to other legal and ethical questions coming to the NHS, and you could end up getting more and more NHS services being downgraded. Because at the end of the day, if you think that self-inflicting an injury is by going skiing, for example, well, you do self-inflict an injury to an extent when you do, like, let's say, have loads of sugar in your diet, have loads of fats in your diet, don't exercise a lot, and you get obesity with that, you get diabetes with that, you get heart disease with that. If you start saying that you're self-inflicting yourself with this stuff because you're having like junk food, well, then it won't be free at the point of use for people who are having junk food then. And then that's probably like what, 30% to 50% of the population right now. Like it's, and like what do you like, it might be a direct cause or indirect cause. There's a lot to think about. Okay, sorry for waffling there. I hope I was able to answer that question to an extent. I don't know what you guys thought of that question. I saw working together for patients, respect and dignity, commitment to quality of care, compassion, improving lives, and everyone counts. The values of the NHS. Ah, that's what you mean by the values. That's a very good little summary. I appreciate you. They appear as 6 values installed for all staff of the NHS. So thank you for that, Asul. We really appreciate you dropping that below. So definitely everyone have a look at that, because I'd basically forgotten. I think what happens is that when you get involved in the NHS, obviously you just accommodate that as your like your A B C D E F G alphabet stuff, and like you forget the actual specifics. So actually, it's interesting because our UCL, so UCL has like a core value for like their future medical students, their future doctors, and they always encourage anyone who has an interview to look at that website and to look at what they want to see in the ideal UCL doctor. And it basically is this what they look for in the values of an NHS member of staff, but just made and adopted to a UCL framework. So working together for patients, yep, respecting them and their dignity, commitment to their quality of care, having compassion, improving lives, and everyone counts. So I think those are quite like very good altruistic terms, quite vague, and stuff. That what I do is definitely encourage you to use examples when they do talk about values of the NHS. Maybe talk about like on my work experience, I saw this specific value of the NHS, like the quality of care given to this patient, and they were handled with respect to dignity. So, for example, I've spoken a lot on my Medmentor lives about my work experience at a hospice, and how the quality of care there was incredible for people at their end of life. People were respected and they were dying with dignity, basically. And there was so much compassion in the care of doctors and all the staff in the MDT, from the nurses to me as the lunch man who was just smiling at them, to then the doctors trying to improve their quality of life. And it didn't matter whatever point of your disease process you were at. We still, if you were about to die tomorrow, we still would care that you are in pain, and we'd want to relieve that pain or want to intervene if we can in a certain way. But there's always limits to that as well. So there's always another side to it that you can talk about. Cool. I hope I was able to answer your question with a little example there on how you can show something like that. So use your work experience examples, maybe something you've read, to answer that type of question. Whichever way they ask you, I'm not too sure because I've not had it myself. Okay. Thank you for that question, though. I hope I've answered it to an extent. Please do let me know if I have or haven't. The next question I've got from Facebook, from Afzal Mia. Female infertility treatment is expensive, has a very low success rate, and is even less successful in smokers. Ooh, right. In these kind of questions, where they ask for opinion for a treatment that is expensive, but on the other hand is very important for a patient, for patients, how am I supposed to answer? Here's Afzal. You want to answer by breaking this question down to key components. So, for example, first of all, what do you know about female infertility versus, let's say, male fertility? So, for me, I know that male infertility treatment is so female infertility treatment. Okay, sorry. Let me rephrase that. So female infertility treatment is very expensive. So what are we talking about here? Define what infertility treatment means to you, because what you want to make sure is that you're on the same page as your examiner of what you have interpreted this question to be, and therefore you should talk about it out loud. So female infertility treatment includes IVF, in talks, and things on top of that, like there's endoscopic laser ablation surgery for people who have like endometriosis and infertility through things like that, or if people have things like PCOS or like problems with their ovaries, there's treatments through that as well. So there's different types of infertility treatments for specific causes of infertility. So that's something to at least address at the beginning, even if you don't know what those specifics are. So you can say you don't know too much about it and be honest about it. Pohe, just in the middle of this question, no one is here next Saturday because Medmentor, we're just taking a break because it's Boxing Day for us in the UK during the holidays. But we'll be back the following week on the 2nd of January, just looking at my calendar, in 2021. So we'll be back next year, by January 2021. Yeah, so coming back to the female infertility question, and then let's define what expensive means. So like I knew back like 7 years ago, IVF cycles used to cost 10,000 or so pounds, and some was given by the NHS, some was given by not the NHS, actually was actually some was given by the NHS and some was actually given by done privately. So that's an option that you can maybe talk about. So it's up to the individual to spend money on it rather than the NHS at some points, and maybe that would be an alternative solution. In these kinds of questions, what would they ask when opinion for treatment that is expensive and is very important? How am I supposed to answer both ways? You answer why it's really important for patients, because you want to show empathy. You want to show that you're trying to understand the patient's perspective, in that if someone can have a baby of their own, that means so much to certain people, their own genetics, their own bloodline. Whilst on the other hand, some people would argue we already have quite a high population in the UK, in the world. There's a lot of kids that are up for adoption, are in foster care, or are in like children's homes without parents and are orphans. So why not do adoption, for example. So that's something to even like talk about. But then obviously being expensive, it comes down to the NHS and their cost effective like rate, like calculations, what they decide on. It might be decided case by case. It is very, this type of question is actually determined by like a obs and gynae consultant, actually, who is like probably like 40 something years old with years and years of experience, right? So they ultimately help make the decision with the parents involved. And the chances of success vary between person to person. So these are variables for you to outline that you're aware of, show to the interview you're aware of, and that you're critically thinking about. And what I'd like to say in that answer is basically talk about for and against of doing it, and not doing it, basically, and then come to a concluding answer. So for and against why you should do female infertility treatment, basically, and a few factors against it, and two or three against it, and 2 or 3 for doing it. And the fact that actually, even though it's a low success rate to an extent, it is still a success rate, and we do have plenty of IVF babies since the 1990s, and the techniques are only getting better, and the procedures are only getting cheaper. So yeah, definitely something to talk about. And there's private care versus public care. Afzal, please let me know if I've been able to answer your question to that to a good extent, hopefully. Please do let me know. Okay, coming back to Insta Live. So hi guys, hopefully you enjoyed that little detour of that question. You guys are getting some really interesting, tricky ethical questions that I don't think me as a final year medical student knows how to answer that well. Very difficult. So if you're finding these ethical questions difficult, don't worry about it, because I'm finding it difficult, and I will still find it difficult until I'm a consultant in whatever field this is, because these ethical scenarios aren't answered by you, me, or normal F1, F2 doctors, or any doctor for an extent. These are, if you're ever unsure about an ethical scenario, make sure you end it or say that actually you yourself would never actually make this decision by yourself. You would always have a team making a decision, normally an ethics board of a hospital, which consists of nurses, doctors of various degrees, consultants to junior grade, who are diverse in their ethnicities and their perspectives in life, for example, and also patients and like normal members of the public, stuff like that. There's a whole diverse team put in place in every hospital and trust to make these decisions on ethics, especially when they're quite big. So always refer to an ethics board in the hospital, or like refer to your senior, your consultant. Consultants make these decisions ultimately. So from you, they're not looking at, yes, you're completely right or wrong in your answer, yes or no. They're looking at what you're thinking about to come to the answer. So think out loud the for and against, and use the 4 principles of medical ethics to guide you to an extent, and your own experiences and your knowledge to do the same. Okay. So hopefully I was able to answer a few of your ethical scenario type questions. Okay, so Z.EXN, hi there. Why do universities want you to learn from work experiences in a clinic? I think universities are very interesting in what they ask for when it comes to admissions, when it's very tricky for anyone under the age of 18 in a hospital environment, unless they know someone specifically, or there's schemes around them. So I think it is largely unfair, but at the same time, saying that, I managed to do work experiences in clinics and stuff because it was kind of like tough. You just got to do it because everyone else does it somehow. The reason why they want you to do it is because by getting work experience, you are finding out the job will entail of being a doctor clinic as a medical student in the next 2 to 3 years, to then you as a doctor in the next like 5 to 10 years, right? And they want you to experience that in whichever way you can, whether that's books about how medicine is and how clinics are, to like YouTube videos, to doing the experience in person. Obviously, in person is how everyone thinks is the gold standard of like getting experience in person is better than just sitting online on a work experience. And so like that's why they want you to get work experience in clinics, to talk to doctors, to talk to patients, to see how the system works in the NHS within a clinic and the healthcare system in general, to get real specific insights and stories that you can reflect on afterwards in your personal statement, in your interviews, to help guide your decision to find out if you're doing medicine or not. And actually, as much as I've waffled about it, it is true to an extent. So, for example, when I was in year 9, I did work experience with a telecommunications engineer because I was really good at maths. Then in year 10, I did year 10, year 11, year 12, I did a few insight days in like accounting competitions firms, or like in finance, and like in things like opticians. Like I got these type of experiences a day or two just to find experiences entailed, and I realized what I liked and didn't like from that day or speaking those jobs. And like I in stark contrast to the work experience I did in a GP surgery or in a hospital, where I really enjoyed what was happening, and that basically shaped the reasoning why I wanted to do medicine in general. So yeah, definitely use those experiences well. Lastly, Hope Shipley, would the IVF postcode lottery for different areas come into the argument? Yes, it will. So I wasn't sure about talking about that because I've heard about that a lot, but I haven't read into it. But definitely something to mention: the postcode lottery with IVF, and NHS treatment lottery based on your area and your clinical commissioning group, your CCG, do specific healthcare services. Are they free at the point of use for you or not? For example, only one round of IVF on the NHS for a woman in one area, have at least 2 or 3 rounds of IVF in another area, and that's very true. Hope Shipley, you have very good knowledge on that. Very well done. Thank you for helping me answer that question as well, guys. Okay. So, guys, I'm gonna call an end to the questions. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Medmentor live session. So what I want to tell you guys before I go is, please do check out the Medmentor website. We have free online resources for you guys to help you guys through your medical school application process, whether that be through interviews, personal statements, UCAT, BMAT. We've got blogs, we've got blog posts, we've got our Insta page, we've got Twitter, we've got like this live that we have weekly, and loads of things going on behind the scenes to help you guys get into med school and get that information out there and spread that to everyone to get as much access there. So please do share our page and our website with people that you know are applying to medical school, people that you think will be benefiting from this, from your friends to your family, because we want to just try and get as many of you guys into med school as possible, because we don't want the information to be to cost you anything. We want it to be free. So please engage with us. Come back and hold me again in 2021 when we'll be back on the 2nd of January, on Saturday, 2nd of January at 6 p.m. We will have weekly Medmentor live sessions, as we have done for the last few weeks. Thank you to Abood, who is one of the co-founders of Medmentor, and because he took my session last week as I was revising for my situational judgment test. But yes, so I'll have a happy and happy new year to you guys from me. Thank you guys for joining and everything. Hey Ramiz, nice to see you. Goodbye Pohey. Thank you Hopsy. Asul, thank you very much for joining in. Ritu, thank you for joining. Asul, see you next year. Big up Medmentor. Woo! Guys, thank you. Please share, like, and thank you guys all at Medmentor for making 2020 pretty cool. And we'll all see each and every one of you in 2021. Bye guys. Bye. See you guys later. Thank you guys on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube for joining in with us. And see you soon.